Welcome back to the IE427 garage, everybody. The prototype is back in the shop, back from Jeff Miller's, and we're starting to put it all back together. As I said, we're starting to put it all back together. That means that all the headlights, the tail lights, the marker lights, the bumpers, all that stuff that we pre-fit before this went to paint is now going to go on the car for the final time. So one of the first things that I always start with is usually a shameless plug for IE427, and that is the license plate bracket. Now, I had forgotten that this is an earlier Mark IV. And got kind of spoiled with the last couple of cars that we did, because even when we used a Mark IV trunk deck lid, we were using the later trunk deck lid, which has more space in between the license plate light and the handle. So you can see, even when I close this, you can see we had to modify the light and allow the license plate to tuck up inside the light for the license plate. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to link in the description over to our Facebook page, where we show you step by step how to modify the earlier Mark IV license plate light assembly. So both the bracket and the light assembly, so that you can get your state license plate to fit in between the handle and the inside of the light. It is not an easy thing to do. It takes, I think this one took me, and keep in mind, I've done this a number of times, but it still took me, I think, 2 hours by the time I farted around with that thing to get the license plate to tuck up in there. And even with that, I still ended up trimming a little bit of the license plate in order to get it fit just the way I wanted to. Now, it would have fit, but it would have really been kind of like bent out. And you know, ours are plastic, but a state plate is metal, and they don't like to bend. I clearance one of our license plates so that this can act as a template for the car owner, so that when he is issued his state plates, he can use that as a guide. And in this case, there's just a small notch at the very top of the plate, so it'll tuck up in there, and that's just to get you around the bottom of the light assembly. So that was the first thing I did, pretty much the day the car came home. And then the next evening, I worked on getting our taillights installed. Now the taillights are in, but I haven't hooked them up to the wiring. I do have the wheel off over here, and that's because I went ahead the following night and I mounted the Le Mans cap. Now keep in mind, when you put that Le Mans cap in, make sure that you ground the actual cap itself to the frame or the chassis. And then we always run a secondary ground from the chassis to the tank. And that way there's no chance of any static buildup when you're fueling the car to cause a spark and a kaboom. So I just like to do that. I think it's an extra measure just to make everything a little bit safer. But Factory 5 does provide you like a bare braided copper wire to go from the Le Mans cap to the chassis, and I suggest you all use it. So that's at the back of the car. I've got some stainless steel washers we're going to do on the back of the car here for our rear overriders, but I'm not ready to install those quite yet, so that'll probably be later in this video, probably in the next couple of days. The front of the car got the LED headlights that the owner ordered for this car. So they're a Hella H4 style lamp assembly with LED capsules inside, and there's an LED driver that we've got mounted to the back of the headlight bucket on each side. And what I did on those is I made them mirror images. So the wiring for this LED driver points in on the back side of the headlight bucket, and so does the one on this side, so it points in towards the center of the car. And that was just an effort to keep all of the wiring nice and neat and kind of pushed in against the actual splash guard that's in the front of the car. We also went ahead and mounted our front marker light. Now, the same thing here. None of these have been tied in as far as the wiring, but I've got them in and they should be ready to go because we've tested all this stuff before when we pre-assembled everything. Now remember, we made sure that our headlight buckets fit within the headlight wells. We made sure our marker lights fit in. We made sure our taillights in the back fit in there. So what I'm going to probably do next is I'm going to go and I'm going to mount the bumper. Now the new bumper from Factory 5 is one piece. It is a bumper assembly with the overriders already attached to it. And the owner just ordered this right before we sent this car off to paint. So I've never installed this one. So I'm thinking maybe I'll do a kind of step-by-step on how this thing goes in, so there might be some cuss words in there, but we'll see how it goes. Once that's in, we've got our one-piece nose aluminum that we had powder-coated black, and that'll go in. And so that'll have to go in side of the bumper hoop through into the mouth of the car, and then we'll open it up and it'll get pop riveted on both sides, and that'll be all done. But I think I'm going to call it there for tonight. I'll catch up with you tomorrow night when I'm back out here in the shop working on the prototype. Alrighty, buddy. It is not the next night. It is indeed 2 days later, and the front bumper's on. You know, I thought it was going to be in typical Factory 5 fashion where I was going to fight with this thing and there were going to be cuss words. And I tell you, you know, I call balls and strikes. When I have to deal with some of these products that Factory 5, you know, sells or produces, if they suck, I'll let you know they suck. But I'll say this about the new bumper. It lined up and it bolted right in. The bolts for the bumper, which are the long bolts that come in from behind, I didn't have to fuss with those at all. And I'm really happy with the spacing that the new bumper gives you versus the old. I mean, on some of the bumpers that we put in previously, you couldn't hardly get your finger in between the body and the bumper hoop itself. And it wasn't a matter of how you bolted the bumper to the overriders, because you physically could not pull that bracket far enough ahead to get the angle correct on the older style bumpers. Now, some of you guys that are still dealing with, you know, Mark IIIs and before, I'm sorry, those bumpers sucked. I mean, they were very time consuming. You had to drill through the stainless, which, if anybody knows, trying to use a high-speed steel bit through stainless, and especially if you don't do it like all in one shot, will dull your bits to like no end. But this bolted right up. And so I didn't even have time to grab the camera. Honestly, I was just like test fitting it, and then I was going to grab the camera and show you guys, you know, step by step how to do it. But it's easy. I mean, 4 bolts and it was on. So I think just looking at it, it's cleaner too, because you don't have those two bolts that were going through the bumper over on this side and this side. And this one versus the previous adaptation for the Mark IV, where you had to re-drill and re-tap the holes in the overriders in order to make them move out, that was a freaking nightmare. So whoever designed the new one, Factory 5, thank you, because that made it just so easy for this thing to go on. And so I'm tickled. Now, I did work on the rear overriders, and I get this question all the time. And a lot of times, you know, I take over a lot of builds for families that have started their build and either run out of time or sometimes just run out of talent. And that's not a dig at the owners. It's just that they just don't have experience building a car. And so they get frustrated, and then the car languishes for a while, and then they just decide they want to pay someone to get it done. Well, I get this question about the overriders and the quick jacks, or even the bumpers, because there's a modification that a lot of guys do to get these overriders put in, or the bumpers or the quick jacks. And Jeff Kleiner is a very close friend of mine. I appreciate the fact that, you know, he came up with another way to mount these. But for someone like myself who does this for a living or does this all the time, putting those coupling nuts on the body before it goes to paint just adds more work for me. And I've just become accustomed to doing them this way. And if you're doing them with those rod couplers, what you're going to find is you end up having to drill out the stainless threads on the overriders in order to let those pieces of all thread or bolt, depending on how you do it. It depends on which model, Mark III or Mark IV. You have to drill out those threads in stainless. And so to me, that's just more work. So what I do is I just cut lengths of 7/16, I believe is the thread size, all thread. And then I'll use all thread for the upper mount here, the lower mount here, and the lower mount here. That's where the gas tank interferes. This upper one, the gas tank does not interfere with. And for us, we have a drop trunk. And so when you have a drop trunk, you can actually access the bolt from the inside. So it goes right in. So I only have to cut 3 pieces of all thread, and I got those in. I did end up doing these at stock length. So I used the stock spacers here. Now, if we were doing just the overriders in the front and not the bumper, I would have tucked everything in. But because we did the bumper and we had to go with the stock length for the spacers in the front, I just thought that it'd be better to keep the back ones at the same distance off of the body that they come pre-cut. I just didn't feel it was worth the extra effort and the extra time to tuck those in like we normally would when we shorten the front ones. With the bumper, you just don't have any choice because the bumper can't go any farther back. So we kept these at stock length. We kept the back at stock length. I've shown you slithering before. If you've watched any of our previous videos, and you know I've got the overriders on slithering tucked right into the body. And then, you know, obviously you're going to get those detractors that are going to tell you, well, you're not going to have any room if, you know, you get in an accident. Well, if a 9,000-pound SUV with, you know, a soccer mom comes up behind you and pushes you, those overriders aren't going to do anything anyway. They're just going to crush into the body. I don't care how long the stems are. So to me, the overriders and tucking them in is all about a look, not a function. I mean, if you're in a parking lot and someone, you know, hits you or you hit them at, you know, a mile an hour, will it stop it? Maybe. But they're not there for anything other than looks on these cars. They serve really no function to jack the vehicles up if you've got quick jacks, because they're not a functional piece of the car. So it's all about aesthetics here, and I thought on this one long and hard. I just thought it would be better to just leave them the way they were rather than spend a bunch of time trying to get them to fit tighter to the body when we can't do that to the front. So I just left them alone. You can see here in the back, I've got the wheel back on the car, and that was just so that I could move the car on the lift back and forth to get better access to the quick jack or the overriders in this case to get them bolted in. So basically what you end up doing on the back of those pieces of all thread where they're coming through and on the gas tank side is you're going to thread some nylock lock nuts onto those just to the point where they're threaded, they start threading onto the nylon, and then you're going to finger tighten those into the overriders until they're snug, and you can do it by hand. It's a little bit of you know, finger origami trying to get in there, but you can do it. And once you get them snug, then you go ahead and you hit them with a wrench. And once you start getting some pressure on those pieces of all thread, then the nut will start going onto the all thread, and then it gets nice and tight, and everything's just the way it should be. So I think what we're probably going to do here tomorrow night is I'm going to go ahead and see if I can start getting the nose aluminum put in here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to leave the cardboard in while I do my primary fitting of the nose aluminum. Now it's been pre-fit, but that was when the body was on before paint. The body never fits the chassis the same way twice. I don't care what anybody says, you never get it in exactly the same spot. So we're going to fiddle around with it. We're going to get the nose aluminum installed, and then what I'll do is I'll fold the sides of the cardboard up and I'll pull it out the front of the car, and then we should be done with all of the pretty stuff up front, minus the vent mesh that goes in those 3 locations. I think we're going to talk to the owner and see if he wants the mesh aluminum in the chin portion of the car as well, because I think we've decided it's all going to get painted black. So if we do the 2 side vents, I think he's probably going to have us do the bottom of the chin as well. So we'll probably get working on that, but that may wait until we get all of the wiring squared away in the front, because that's about the time that I do all that stuff, so that I only have to take the wheels off of the front of the car once. So I think that's going to do it for tonight. I'll catch up with you tomorrow night. All right, one last thing with the overriders, and in this case, we're going to use these for the door hinges as well. So you can see I've got some 3/8 stainless flat washers and some 1/2 inch stainless flat washers. The ones that are the 1/2 inch, because you can't find any at most local hardware stores in 7/16, are going to go right in here against the body. Now on the other side of the fiberglass, I don't care if they're just standard steel flat washers that are supplied from factory 5, because you can't see them. But since the stems here are stainless, the overriders are stainless, I want to make sure that everything is stainless out here. And so we just swap these out for stainless washers, top and bottom on both sides. And that's the way we're going to leave these. On the door hinges, you'll watch me do this later. But, you know, when Jeff sets the door gaps, he just uses the washers that Factory 5 provides, which are just standard steel washers. In this case, Jeff used just a set of whiz nuts. Those are the flange nuts. Jeff calls them whiz nuts, to put the doors on. We'll replace those washers with stainless washers, and then they'll get stainless acorn nuts. Factory 5 does supply you with the stainless acorn nuts, but they don't always include the stainless washers to go behind them. And keep in mind that you may or may not have to add washers to each spot. Like Jeff didn't put a washer here, but here he did. And sometimes he'll have to adjust the actual door by putting washers on there, because he won't be able to get enough adjustment out of the door hinges or at the bottom down here. So we'll address that later when we do the doors for the final time, but pick yourself up some stainless washers in both sizes. And you know, I buy them by the box, so I got a box of 25 with a 1/2 inch and a box of 25 for the 3/8 inch, and I'll just keep them here. I just happen to be out of both sizes when we got to this portion of this car build. And herein lies the problem. You know, at the other shop, I had fewer distractions because I wasn't trying to build a shop or finish a shop, because I had that shop far enough along that I really didn't need to do a whole lot. And this is a little bit different. You know, I've got the shop where it's working, but I still have things to do. Like, for instance, the roll-up door you can see behind me. I've started to frame it out. And so when I got home from my 9 to 5 today, I figured that it would be a good time to take some of the trim boards that I have that I bought and get them all primed and painted. So that's one of the first things I did today when I got home. So those should be ready to install here in the next couple of days. I do have my garage door. It's in those 2 boxes right there, and mixed feelings about this. The problem from ordering a door from a home center is that they really only want to sell you homeowner style hardware, and so this comes with a spring system that is completely enclosed in the rod or the bar that goes across. and will not allow you to use a side mount garage door opener other than their own brand, which they've discontinued. So I've ordered some spring and drums and brackets, and those are going to be here in the next few days. So back to car work. I'm starting on getting the hood struts installed on the prototype, but I ran into a problem. In the rush, or in the confusion of moving, I forgot that the back firewall, let's call it, that barrier between our package tray and the trunk needed to be notched. These are the older style Factory 5 hinges. They are not pre-drilled for the struts, and I failed to put in the forward mounts for said struts. So what I'm doing now is I've got a set of brackets that I've got from Mike Everson, and I'm using all of the parts, the other parts that I got with the Factory 5 kit, to adapt this to more of a Mark III style trunk strut. And the reason that I've been waiting on this is because I didn't have access to my two prop rods. I had a trunk prop rod, which you see here, and over here in the corner, I have a hood prop rod, and they're of two different lengths because obviously you need a longer one or a taller one for the hood because the hood opens farther. We've already got the hood done here, so I don't need it, but I needed this one for the trunk to hold it open while I install this strut kit on the back, and I finally got around to moving some stuff around on the back of the F350 workbench today. Got all the boxes reorganized, moved them off onto the red cart, opened the back of the trunk, the truck under the lid, and got all of the parts that are car related and all the tools that are car related out. So now I have said straight edges, all of them are out, so I have access to those the next time I do carpeting. I got my trunk prop rod and my hood prop rod out. I got a bunch of tubing that I had in the truck because the truck has an 8-foot bed and all those were about that length, and so it was easy to put them in there where they wouldn't get harmed. So I had fuel line, I had brake line, all kinds of different lines of tubing that I've now pulled out and found a safe place for here in the shop. So the truck is pretty much cleaned out other than stuff that is actually for the truck. So hopefully in the next couple of days, I'm gonna be back working headlong into the prototype and getting it squared away. What I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold off one more night and I'm gonna get the nose aluminum installed in the prototype tomorrow night, and then we'll see what happens after that. We'll see where I'm at. All right, it is the next night and I am working on nose aluminum. So I've got the nose aluminum all assembled. So that means I've got all of the bulb seal, both inside and outside, attached to it. You can see I've already got my holes drilled down the side. That's gonna line up with our 3/4 inch tubes inside the car, and that's where it's gonna attach. Now, this is one of the items that we're gonna start selling. We're not gonna sell the complete nose aluminum. I talked to Mike Everson, and shipping this piece of nose aluminum in one piece has become very cost prohibitive to anybody probably west of the mid part of the country. It's an odd shaped box, even though it doesn't weigh a whole lot. All of the shipping companies are charging a fortune. So you're gonna end up paying more in shipping than you would for the actual piece. So I talked to Mike, and I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually sell a template. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send you a full-size template, paper or cardboard template, and we'll be able to ship that folded. We haven't come up with a firm price on what the template's gonna cost, but we're gonna try to keep it in line so that by the time you buy the template, buy your material and cut it out, because you can cut this with a pair of tin snips if you want. I mean, you're gonna end up fitting and filing the edges anyways before you put bulb seal on, and you're gonna have to provide your own bulb seal as well. But we'll give you links to McMaster Car, and most other upholstery suppliers will sell the bulb seal. So you'll be able to get these at a reasonable cost, make it yourself with our template, and this way you're not spending a fortune on shipping. And like I said, I did run this by Mike Everson, and he said fine. I don't think we're going to sell a cajillion of these things, but at least it's another option for all of you out there that are looking to do the one-piece nose aluminum rather than three-piece aluminum that Factory 5 provides in the kit. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get this thing all basically folded up. So I'm going to take the left side over here, I'm going to fold it in, I'm going to take the right side, I'm going to fold it in, and then I'm going to insert it through the nose of the car, and then we'll open it up and I'll bring you guys back, show you what that looks like. So this is what I'm talking about when I say fold it up. We use 040 aluminum on this, and we're not using 6061 aluminum, we're using 5052. So it's a little bit more pliable. And so you're going to be able to get this inserted into the nose of the car a lot easier than if it was 6061. You can go with thinner gauge aluminum. The problem is if it's thinner, it wants to crease or you know, bend, and then it's going to hold that shape, and you're going to have a hard time getting it to look like it has that rounded kind of look to it when it's all said and done. So let me get this in there and I'll bring you right back. All right, as you can see, I've got it in place. And one nice thing, if you're using one of the adjustable lower and upper mounts on this, you can loosen up that lower mount and you can actually push the radiator back out of your way to get the nose aluminum in. You can see we've got a little buckle in it right here. We're going to end up pushing all this back where it needs to go, and then that's going to take the buckle out of that piece, and we're going to be all good. So I'm going to work on getting the rivets put in and getting the radiator back in place, and I'll bring you right back. All right, I figured while I was under here, I would show you guys a little tip to save you a few bucks. If, like us, you make your own lower tube for the Coyote, and that is a combination of the tube that Factory 5 supplies with the Coyote conversion kit and one of the older style donor hose kit. I think I'll try to dig up that part number, but and then this is just an 1.5 inch piece of stainless tubing that we did 2 beads on the end so it won't come off. And this little hanger right here is just a simple conduit strap that I put some heat shrink tubing on to insulate it, and instead of the standard machine nut on there, I went ahead and added a nylock so it won't work its way loose, and that's it. It holds it nice and secure in place, so you're not going to have to worry about it rattling loose. Last thing, I've got the nose aluminum all in place. Still got to wipe it down, but you can see it's in here, and it looks really good. We'll hit it with some cleaner when we do a final detail of the car, but you can see it leveled out in the front here, so there's no longer that hump in it. Once that bulb seal relaxes a little bit, it'll all kind of conform to the shape of the radiator, and that's done. Now, the reason I was under the car was because I wanted to get the radiator pushed back into place, and having it up on the lift and pushing it forward and holding it while you tighten the brackets on the bottom of the lower support is the easiest way to do it. So that's why I was under the car, and I just figured while I was there, might as well attack that lower radiator hose and get a clamp put on that. So I think that's going to do it for this one. If you're enjoying the content here, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.